Greetings, my name is Peter Alexander. In this video, I'm going to go through some of the steps that may help you to create a celebrity style caricature using Character Creator 5, Headshot, ActorMIXER, a new CaricatureMIXER Pack, and then finally into Blender. Let's begin. The first thing I'll do is run a few reference photos through Hyper 3D to generate a 3D reference mesh for Headshot. Now this step isn't strictly necessary if you have the skill to adjust the mesh manually based on a photo reference, but I'm including it to provide an optional starting point. I chose Hyper 3D for this workflow because I found that other platforms like Hunyuan produced results that were a bit too stylized for this specific project. To get the source images, simply ask an image editing AI, such as NanoBanana, to generate front and side views, making sure to remove the hair, then throw those references into the generator to proceed. The 3D generation looks decent enough, so I will download and load it into Headshot 2.0 using the Mesh option. This maps the details of the reference mesh onto the Character Creator base mesh. The process is straightforward. Start by aligning corresponding points on each mesh, then refine the fit using the brushes provided in the next stage. You can add, delete, and switch between subdivision levels as needed to align the details before generating the result. I'll set the generation type to male and select a masking style to ensure the details blend smoothly. He wouldn't be the Terminator without an imposing physique, so I'm going to send him through ActorMIXER and blend him with some elements from the CaricatureMIXER Pack. I want to add muscle and just enough exaggeration to define the direction of the caricature before sending him to Blender for refinement. I'm rapidly cycling through possible combinations to see which exaggerations would best suit this caricature. If you have morph combinations that don't blend well, you can usually correct them using the Edit Mesh brushes. I prefer to reduce the mesh to a lower resolution, smooth out the details, and then mirror the changes over to the other side. Switching to a lower resolution and mirroring can also preserve some asymmetrical details at a higher resolution. If you find things are too off-center to mirror properly, check the bone's move and rotation values. Generally, I only need to adjust Move X and Rotation Z values. For a centered bone, like the head, the X-axis should be zeroed out. Rotation is a bit trickier, these are rarely zero values. They are often rotated positive or negative 90 degrees or some non-zero value, but if you see a value like negative 89 degrees, it usually needs to be rounded to exactly negative 90. Correcting this, along with zeroing out the Move X, will fix most mirror symmetry issues. Be sure to check the neck, head, face, jaw root, tongue, upper jaw, and teeth bones. Next, I'm going to remove some of the heavy shadows from the texture. You can do this in any raster-based image editor. I use a free application called Krita. You might lose a bit of the reference likeness, but if you're selective, you can retain the key elements. The textures aren't hugely important for this particular process anyway. Now I'll send the character to Blender using the Blender Auto Setup add-on using the GOB Morph Edit function. I'm sending him over at subdivision level 2 because I don't need a lower resolution pass for this. Entering sculpting mode, I'm pushing, pulling, and smoothing to add sculpted detail. I find the move or grab brushes do most of the heavy lifting here. The CaricatureMIXER Pack and Headshot gave me a solid foundation, so I can push the shape in the right direction without starting from scratch. I will now send him back to Character Creator using the Go CC function in the Blender Auto Setup pipeline that is installed on the Blender side. I'm trying various hairstyles on him, but I've noticed his forehead is a bit too low, so I'll send the character back to Blender to fix that. And there we go. He's looking much better with the hair and final adjustments. Now I'm going to use the Smart Search function to find a leather jacket. The trial function allows you to download a watermarked version of the outfit. It's great for testing, but you can't render it without purchasing. If you buy the iContent version, you can use it freely within the Reallusion ecosystem. However, a standard license grants you the ability to take it into other 3D software such as Blender and ZBrush. There's a wide variety of clothing and assets available using the Smart Search function, as well as characters, morphs, animations, hair, etc. And the ability to try before you buy is extremely useful. There's also a deep search similar function, which finds comparable items to the one you're interested in. Since I want to adjust the clothing in Blender, I purchased a standard license for this leather jacket. I don't need to use the Smart Search function to find the rest of his clothing, because I picked them out from my existing content beforehand. The Smart Search function is great for shopping, but the standard content search can be quicker if you've zeroed in on an existing item. If you find that an article of clothing replaces an existing item, you can use the clothing layer settings to move it to another slot. Also pay attention to how the clothing is layered, as this can impact things like conform and the auto hide function. In this setup, the leather jacket should be layered above the shirt and jeans. As with real life, some clothing just doesn't fit, and for hyper-exaggerated 3D characters, this has often presented a problem. The clothing is designed for normal human proportions, and this caricature pushes the ability to conform to characters past its limits. To mitigate this, you'll need to bring it into another application like ZBrush or Blender, and even out the geometry stretching. The Blender auto setup pipeline is especially good for this. Send the entire character to Blender once the data link has been established. From there, you can use the sculpting tools to adjust the fit of the clothing. I mostly use the grab brush. The smooth brush in Blender is pretty strong by default, so you may want to lower the strength significantly if you plan to use it. Once you're finished adjusting, go to the link section of your pipeline add-on in Blender and look at the options under Data Link. Selecting the Mesh option will update the vertex positions of your clothing in Character Creator. Make sure the character is in the default bind pose in Character Creator, otherwise the data sent from Blender will not align. Now the clothing fits. A few more quick adjustments and I'll prepare a render to finish off this demo.
I have analyzed the threat level and determined that I require heavier firepower to complete this mission. Stay here and do not move. I'll be back. As for the enemy units approaching the perimeter, hasta la vista, baby.